This is Brock Beard. Once again, I apologize for those of you folks here that were here for the first part of the stream. When it was supposed to start half an hour ago there, I think I snapped the transaxle on the old internet here, but we got that working again. So we are back again. So yeah, anybody that's still in the other stream, definitely make sure you work your way over here. I do apologize where this kind of dropped off here. Let me lead off here while everybody's filtering in here. Michael Jensen, I did see your super chat, and I made sure I screenshotted it before I restarted the air stream. So let me jump back into that there for you. Do you feel the mechanical issues will be a year-long thing, or just because of the slow speeds needing extra torque? Very good question. I hadn't actually thought of that with the actual track, given that this is basically, as a tiny Martinsville, even smaller than that. And of course, you look at those older clips of races where cars are rearing up down those straightaways that are twice as long as this one here. Yeah, I mean, the track, it could be very much a big factor in the issues that we saw quite suddenly out of Tyler Reddick in particular. I know Hamlin and Briscoe apparently had some different issues there along the same way there too. But yeah, good question. I think we're not going to really get a good feel for that probably until these next couple of races. I think that's the biggest thing from this weekend that I think in some ways it feels like it's a little bit too new to discuss a lot of the aspects of the mechanical issues with the cars, and in other ways, yeah, I mean it's kind of, it perhaps is revealing about certain flaws these cars may be having actually. So yeah, kind of a weird situation there in the main event where you had them appear so suddenly. Just taking these drivers out just completely, where they couldn't even, obviously with the infield at this particular track, there was, very little room for having a lot of equipment, very little you could do in terms of repairs, from there too. So, it's, definitely another thing to really look at from there. Yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna, not to kick the ball down the line there, but I do think it's something that is worth looking at. Certainly there were concerns about, all these other particular mechanical issues, and how quickly they kind of diagnosed that, the thing wasn't going to be able to be fixed. I think with Reddick, what was particularly interesting is that his car was actually up on a jack there with the right side up for quite a while, compared to what happened with the 11 and the 14. Both of those cars, they pretty quickly kind of shuffled them off. They looked under the hood, kind of pushed them off to where the actual tow truck was parked at the same time there. So I didn't really get the full story on that. That was kind of a tricky thing to kind of follow up. This kind of dovetails to kind of one of the other logistical concerns I guess I had about the race weekend also. I thought for sure that when you had drivers that were dropping out in the first half of the race, that they were going to use the music break to kind of tow those cars out. I did not realize that Ice Cube's performance was only allotted about 6 minutes. It was in fact described as just a 6-minute break over the NASCAR official channel during the actual race. And that wasn't even really enough time to hook one car up, much less anything else. I had gone out there to kind of take a peek at the garage area to see if measures were being taken for that. But unfortunately that wasn't the case. I did get back in time for the race to kind of resume there, but yeah, kind of a weird situation there that they didn't take advantage of that. Maybe they would have been able to get back out there and, get back over to the hauler, maybe get some more equipment that they couldn't have picked up actually, and then get back out. You just get back in that tunnel and come back out into the track. That perhaps was just a logistical thing that they hadn't really figured out. But certainly for my beat, following the last place finishers, it was a huge challenge on my side there. And I would have loved to get more information or really be there while they're working on the cars. I don't know how much Fox was covering it. Because, they have their own staff and there was so little room in that infield that you could, I mean, everybody was kind of jammed up against each other, even just after the race when I got down there. But yeah, unfortunately didn't really get a clear story on that. I followed the teams back to the garage area after the race. And at that point, they were pretty much just loaded up at that point. Drivers weren't really available. Well, at least the ones I want to talk to. Briscoe actually stayed for a while after, to sign some autographs. I could have spoken to him there, but I don't know. I guess I was really kind of off my game there a little bit too. I really wanted to be able to get an understanding of what the mechanical side is with these cars, especially when you had those three freak issues. If under better circumstances, those three teams were actually towed back to their haulers and it was separated from all the noise, and you could just kind of calm down and kind of just talk to these guys, that would have been much preferable. But clearly that wasn't the situation. And by the time the race was over with, they're just kind of over it at that point. Kind of interesting how that all that kind of, shook out. But that was, that was kind of a weird situation there. But I think the stream was cutting off when I was kind of starting to describe the area in which the track is. And I think, again, speaking to the logistics of fans and drivers and everybody getting in there, again, you have the USC campus, you have Exposition Park that's just below it, or just next to it. I'm not sure north, south, wherever that fits into it. But Exposition Park is a very large campus separate from the school itself, where the stadium is just one corner of it. You got a soccer stadium out there. You have, you have museums in the area, natural history, African American museum, and a science museum that are all placed in there. And all these like immediately next to the Coliseum. So you have a very cluttered area to negotiate a lot of fans through there. They actually kind of crammed about it was probably more like a half dozen souvenir haulers in a space behind they had a lot of chain link fencing as temporary barriers to kind of section off things, whether it was the garage area or the fan area and so forth, and trying to channel people to the gates around the stadium. But the access points to the stadium were mostly around the section between like the torch. The torch wasn't, there was I think there was a gate there. And all the way from, I guess this would be turn 2 to turn 4. So that was kind of that area. So like basically that half of the stadium was kind of the way that you would get in there. Anything on the back half of it, or I guess the front half of it rather, turns 4 to turn 1 complex where the media center and stuff was. That was that road where the cars were being staged to go into the garage area or into the stadium, and then the garage area behind that. So that half of the stadium area, they had really limited access. And then there was some frustration I saw from some fans trying to get into the stadium on race morning in particular. I think they gave a very limited amount of time. Again, I mentioned the gate openings there at the start. And I don't want this to trend too negatively early on because there's a lot of positives to really take from this weekend. And we'll certainly get into that as well. But definitely the gate openings, I think, perhaps there were just limitations with the complex itself that just weren't worked out in time between last September when this was announced and the race weekend itself. But I thought it was ridiculous to, that they couldn't just have this be a one-day event. I thought it was silly that they had a whole 2-hour practice session where fans weren't allowed in. Because they weren't allowed in all the way until 1 o'clock in the afternoon when the practice is at 9:30 to 11:30. And then you had, you had that all kind of sectioned off. And then, you have the fans come in there. They have qualifying, which goes for maybe an hour, right when dusk hit. And that's it. And there were no other concerts or anything on Saturday. The Saturday ticket, should have been next to nothing because, that was pretty much the only, thing you had for the price of admission there. So, not surprisingly, it wasn't marketed very well for that day. And you didn't have a whole lot of fans that were in there that day. Whatever coverage was shown of that. I do think the visuals of the torch were very nice, but yeah, there weren't, a ton of people there, at the same time there. But then, by Sunday, and this was mentioned in the previous stream before it cut off there. The gates weren't open until 10 o'clock, and Eric was correct about that, in pointing that out. They went to a very, tight turnaround. If you have the gates open at 10 o'clock and the heats are going to start at noon, that's not enough time. Even if you're just having like a stadium where everything is like within striking distance, it wasn't too much of a hike to get from, the souvenir section to the track itself. Everything was pretty well condensed because the properties of the museums and everything else in the complex that wasn't really being used for the race were all there. And there were kind of rows of parking structures up over the next few blocks that most people were parked in. I think there was media access in there that was more in the immediate area, like right across the street from the Coliseum. I'm not sure exactly how that worked out. I never knew anything about parking passes or anything on that. I got steered into the media one on the first day, but I think the security just wasn't exactly sure who was supposed to go where. They made that pretty clear for the first day. I don't know if that was fixed the second. But yeah, there wasn't really a whole lot of time allowed for fans to kind of explore the area, get their bearings. If they weren't there on Saturday, they were going to have a little bit of a struggle trying to figure out where their seats were. And I think that did have a factor into why it was such a late arriving crowd for the race. You certainly watch the heat races and there's not a lot of people there, but Matt Weaver, I believe, posted a picture of the souvenir tents out there and the massive crowds out there. So the crowd was absolutely there. And we got there. Let's see. We were aiming for the 10 o'clock start, because Last Pro was with me, and he, of course, couldn't get in until 10 o'clock. I could get in there, at that time. There was a lot of media that got there really early, maybe like 7 or 8, and, of course, their media access got them in there. But by the time we got over there, 9:30, 10 o'clock, you had people that were kind of crowding around the first couple of gates where the torch was, and everybody was constantly, told to kind of go further around the perimeter of the Coliseum so they could, because there were several gates. There were plenty of places to get in. And actually, once I went far enough down to, I guess, about the Turn 2 complex, that was where I was able to get in. And, the media thing made that a little bit easier. But there were other fans that were able to there were fans there that were able to get through that gate pretty well. And so I think the method of ingress, once they actually opened the gate, was pretty good. But the lines for everything was just stacked, and there, and all that. And I think it was 2 hours to, walk through the gate. Even if you went there right when gates opened, and then you were walking around walking around there, and then getting over to your seats and getting food and all that stuff. I think that was a tall order there. And they probably were anticipating they weren't going to get as big of a crowd because there were sections of those seats that were covered up that weren't available anyway, but they pretty much sold that place out. It wasn't strictly speaking a sellout. I never heard any reports about that, but I think that was a factor into why you didn't see as many people there in the earlier preliminary events for that. I think it wasn't that they weren't interested in them or that they weren't aware that they were happening. I think it was much more that they just didn't have enough time to really do what they needed to do. There were long lines absolutely everywhere. If you didn't go to the souvenir tents or wanted to try certain things on Saturday, you probably weren't going to be able to on Sunday without missing some of the track action there. And that was, I hope that wasn't a frustration for most people, because I think if you were a recreational fan that maybe isn't in that into practice or qualifying, you're just there for the race, I think the majority of the people that were there did get to see the race. I wasn't sure what the traffic looked like. It's hard to tell in LA because the traffic there is usually really bad. I will say that the traffic getting to the track was very good. I've had worse traffic going to just about any other venue that we've gone to. I thought, we were staying in Santa Clarita, which is about, I think it was a 35-minute drive north of the track. And we never really had any issues at all on Saturday. And then Sunday, not until like pretty much the last exit before getting there. And even then, I think, we left later in the day, but we were able to get there pretty good. So I think a lot of those logistics worked out pretty well. But I think those would be two things that I think that they could look at for next year and beyond, if it does turn out that they're going to run it. And I think they're very positive on that from the response so far, which is good to hear. I think making it a one-day event, having the gates open very, very early, make it open very early, just, have it be like, I don't know, 6, 8 o'clock, something like that, something closer to what you see at a points race for a big event. I think that would be much better. And then just have it all in one day. Make the main event at night, make it a night race, because as Pockris pointed out, it does have lights, and nighttime qualifying was really cool. But it made you think, yeah, this is kind of what the main event should have been. The main event should have been at night. I think with the torch and the solemnity of it, the Olympic Village. I mean, think about the Olympic opening ceremonies. Those are often at night, aren't they? I mean, certainly in the Winter Olympics, they usually are. And it really adds to the spectacle. You see the torch, you see the fire a lot better. And, the backdrop, I think, would have worked well. It was still fine during the day. And it cooled down really nice in the second half of the main event. When I was sitting under the stairs by the torch there, where the driver intros were taking place. I thought that was set up really well. But yeah, I think the single day event, I think, would be the first change I would make to this. And that's what I would do. I would make practice and qualifying in the morning for the hardcore people, and recreational people could come in the afternoon, watch the heats in the main event, and just make the time work. I mean, I think absolutely could. I think that would have been a really good way to really find out on that. So that was a little bit there. Yeah, and again, I haven't seen the, for those of you tuning in that didn't see the first part of this, before my internet cut out earlier, I have not seen the Fox broadcast yet, so I can't really comment on it. It sounded like there was some reports that people liked Stewart in the booth. There were concerns about the camera angles. I know I've beat that drum plenty of times in tracks much larger than this, especially from Fox. But those are things that I hope to kind of be able to learn more about there as the more of the clips of that are being shown there too. Yeah, but I thought it was, but I think this would be a good time to kind of steer into the more positive aspects of it there. Again, I think it was a really cool setting. Again, I thought the way to get there was not that bad. I think there was a nice leisurely walk that everybody had to get from the parking structures there. There were even people that were actually tailgating in the parking structures. Not full on barbecues, of course, in that proximity, but hanging out and getting ready to go in there. I don't know how early they came, although there was the parking attendant at the structure we parked at rather, said that people had been coming in there since 7 o'clock that morning. And this again, with the gates opening at 10. So there was a good amount of people coming in. And we were, again, kind of part of the late arriving crowd, getting there about 9 o'clock, 9:30. Yeah, I mean, the parking structure wasn't packed, but it was getting there. So, and that was at the farthest extent, beyond the stadium. But I thought that was really cool. And the excitement, I think, aside from the gates, when people were first coming in there, everybody was fired up, and especially by the main event. When I was, watching the heat races, I was sitting over in the, turn 4 complex, which is about where I was sitting for qualifying as well the day before. It gave a great view. And I think, frankly, if there were any concerns about camera work, and again, I'll be curious what the particulars are of that. I think that I think a really minimalist approach to the camera work would have been just have a camera basically in that section. They had a lot of different posts up there that were used for photographers that they could have put video cameras on, and a lot of those were empty. Dalon Barr, a great photographer out there, was using one of them, and there were some other photographers using them too. But I think that could have been used for just a video camera work, and you could have treated this race like dot racing. If you ever go to a baseball game and they have like the little track that's just basically or a small circle, and you're looking at racing from like an overhead view, and you're just watching dots move around the track. I think that would have worked really well. I mean, you got the roof numbers on the cars, you got and everything like that. I think something closer to that to give an indication of how quickly they're flying around there, and how quickly people were being lapped too. It was certainly a challenge, in that opening green flag run, when Wallace was getting lapped by Tyler Reddick, and Kyle Busch was trying to kind of catch him through the pack. That was captivating to watch, and I think they did a good job with that. I like that they had the screens actually showing timing and scoring. I like that they had that modern edifice where they have the press box and everything, had all these horizontal LED screens and everything that I guess are pretty common in most places. I don't go to too many stadiums. It's probably the first time I've been in one strictly like the football variety since I went to a Raider game probably about 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah, I thought it really was conducive to the racing. When of course you don't have, rather than bring a big scoring pylon and take up a bunch of space in the infield that you just don't have. So I think that worked out pretty well. But yeah, I think we had a really, I think it was really cool. I definitely don't regret going to it for sure. I think it was so much of it was surreal though, as I kind of wrote in my Saturday feature. It didn't. I mean, I went to school in Southern California, so I went to school at UC Irvine, and some of walking down there reminded me of going to school. It reminded me more of going to school than going to a race. And it was kind of the most surreal experience, just going down. You got all the trees, You did have students and stuff that were around there and everything too, and hanging out. Although, and again, this is, that was kind of a thing too. There's been a lot of people asking if a lot of people that were in the stands were college students, that if it was the typical crowd that you would have for a college football game. I never really got that sense. I wandered around there pretty good. It looked like it was a bit of an older crowd. I saw a lot of couples. I saw a lot of, groups of friends that probably could have been, college age students, but kind of trending more to, I would say mid to late 20s. Nowadays, I'm almost 40 here. A college age student seems like somebody that's like, much closer to, like high school age or something like that. I wouldn't say that most of that crowd was of that age. It seemed like it was I wouldn't say like it was entirely like really, really old people, but more like, probably that 25 to 40 kind of demographic. Even that is probably being too, maybe broader than that, because there were definitely younger people there. Again, younger couples, some groups of, friends and stuff like that. A lot of people brought their kids, things of that nature. I thought it was a really pretty diverse group, I would say, these reports that, up to 70% of the ticket buyers were people that have never been to a NASCAR race before. I'm willing to believe that. A lot of people there, I think, weren't exactly sure what they were going to see. And I think that's probably, again, a reason that you didn't have a lot of them, in the stands. I think the 30% were the ones that you saw in the stands during practice and certainly Saturday. I think that was much more the hardcore NASCAR group. But by Sunday, yeah, I think it trended. It probably trended younger on Sunday. But again, I saw a lot more like family. It seemed like people about my age. I mean, maybe, my age or within a 10-year gap on either side, maybe thereabouts. Maybe not so much the older group there, but there was some, but it was all over the place. It wasn't, I'll tell you this, they didn't, I don't think, and again, hopefully we'll get more information on this down the line. I don't think they stuffed the field, they brought in field fillers, if you will, with a bunch of college students there. Because I walking around Exposition Park, I didn't see a bunch of college students really hanging around there either. There were a few people checking out the museums and stuff, especially on Saturday, but very, very few. Very few. I mean, I wonder if USC has become kind of what Irvine was like, where a lot of people live in the area and they just go home on the weekends, because that was kind of typical for Irvine. USC is very cloistered, and it's surrounded, I think, by a much more kind of an urban area. I mean, UCLA is like that too, but it's kind of woven into that a little bit more. But USC, especially by being a much smaller campus, but I didn't see a whole lot of college students hanging around, and really actually after the race, walking back over there, they had a beach volleyball section, and there were just people training there like it was just any other day, and college students there. So, and they certainly didn't go to the race. So, and if they did, they got to training pretty quick afterwards. So, so I think it was a pretty good group. It certainly wasn't one where it was, everybody was really old or everybody was really young. I think you had a really diverse group, and I mean that in every sense of the term too. I think this wasn't like every typical NASCAR fan in there too, or anything like that. I think, and I think NASCAR has kind of talked themselves down a little bit too much in terms of what their demographic actually is. I think that this is, there's been a lot of people that have been fans of the sport that have been diverse over the years. And it's not a thing that has just suddenly happened out of thin air now. I think they've been too hard on themselves with that. I think, you go to races, even like Darlington or, any tracks like that, that have had a lot of different people. But I think the big difference in this one was just these sheer numbers of everybody. I had one guy that I talked to on the infield there when I was taking pictures, like the diecast cars on the track. who worked for Ron Hornaday's crew, back in the day, and he brought his son out, and they were hanging out. And then you had other people that were, people that had never had any inclination of going to a race before or bringing their kids out there and hanging out on the same thing. So I thought it was really good to see. So yeah, that'll be kind of one to look at there too. So Wrinklestein, I see your comment there. It'll be at Dover or Pocono. Don't have those planned currently at the moment. I'd love to do both of them one of these days. But next race we're looking at is going to be Fontana at the end of this month. So we're going to be taking another trip down to Los Angeles area, or the basin itself, going down towards Ontario direction. And then after that, it'll be Sears Point, Vegas, and Phoenix, still tentatively set for the conclusion of this year. Things are still up in the air, of course, with Derek Cope and other things of that matter. So we'll find out there. But that's, other ones to kind of look at too. I was very pleased, but massive crowd, more people at this one than at the football game I went to at the Raiders at what was it, Qualcomm Stadium, or no, O.Co Stadium, or whatever the heck they had called it by that point, back over in Oakland. Didn't have a crowd this big. It was massive. I mean, I was going up there. I mean, the hook on my belt, I wear that belt over there where it has like put all my stuff in. My hook kept getting hooked on people going through there. It was so close. There were seats that you had in the upper echelons, like halfway up there, where people's legs are just kind of dangling off into the aisle, and people were packed shoulder to shoulder there. And I was walking, and my hook kept getting hooked on it. And then I was walking by, and one of the spotters came by, and my cable on my scanner thing got hooked on his thing. And he's like, "Hey, you got to get that thing clipped." And it was like, there was that little room. And this was like in the turn 3 to 4 area, which actually had a good amount of shade. And I think people were kind of trending that way. So I was just trying to find a seat. I mean, I was able to kind of just stand before when there was hardly anybody in there. But of course, I didn't want to block anyone's view. So I was just looking to squeeze in anywhere. But there were like the first 2 or 3 seats I tried, it was somebody else's seat. And that was fantastic. It's like, okay, there's more people coming, and they're going to be filling those seats. And that was fantastic. I mean, when I finally found one, I think it was something that, probably another group was reserved for. So that was really, I skedaddled out of there. That's why I went over to the Torch area. I think that was probably, if there was anything that it could be construed as a general admission area, that was probably it right there. Although that mostly had, let's see, he had a lot of crew members. I saw some Trackhouse guys that had laptops in their laps. That's where Chris Rice was filmed from Colleague Racing, dancing to the music there. So that was awesome. And a lot of fans, though, in that area. I think they just kind of use that as overflow. I think, and I thought personally that was probably a more comfortable area to watch the race than any of the seating areas. Lastbro was actually over in the Turn 1 complex there. We ordered his seat back in September, pretty much the day of that this was announced. And, we said that we wanted to get something kind of higher up because that was kind of what he had done before, but they gave him kind of the lower tier. But again, there were some, I stopped myself again and saying there was not really a bad seat in the house. There were some, because of the media center and all that construction on the front stretch there. There were some seats that go up right into the sides of that building, where probably in a football game you probably still get a good view, but it blocked off a good view of really most of the track there, or at least a good section of the track, like at least 1 or 2 turns you couldn't see, and most people kind of stayed out of those. And I think that's where maybe people just kind of slotted in from there. If they got stuck with those seats, it's like, okay, let's try something else. Or some of the photography podiums that were out there were, they were of such a height where if you sat down, it was like right at eye level, and so you couldn't see over them. And see, somebody like me, I got kind of a short torso. I'm like mostly legs. So when I sit down, it just goes like that, and you can't see anything. So that was kind of the different deal there too. I mean, really cool stadium. Really, love the history. Apparently they're celebrating their 100th anniversary coming up. They played, I believe, both Saturday and Sunday. They certainly did it before qualifying, which I think set the tone quite well. And they did that. And you really felt like you were part of like something big, especially when you had that many people there. And they were into it. That was the other thing too. Now there was some exaggerations, certainly. Lastbro actually told me, that at one point, I think it was before the Stenhouse spin that happened in the main event, he overheard the folks on the radio saying, it's like, oh my gosh, the crowd goes delirious as the 47 spins out. And he's just kind of looking at the other, like, two people next to him. And he's like, what the heck is this guy talking about? Like, we're just kind of sitting here watching this. And so, you know, that was just kind of ridiculous. But I mean, there's always a little bit of fabrication when it comes to some of this broadcasting. But really, in general, the crowd was getting into moments. I wouldn't say they were going delirious, but they were reacting. And you could hear, I think one of the coolest moments that happened from the entire weekend was on Sunday before the first heat race started. Because what happened is when everybody slotted in there on Sunday, the cars weren't on the track. They weren't in the infield. They weren't even in the tunnel. So everybody was slotting in there. You had maybe, I don't know what percentage of the people in the crowd. And then all of a sudden you hear an engine fire up. And you don't see anything, but the acoustics of the tunnel brought that right into the Coliseum. And I was over in turn 4, but I'm sure everybody else could hear it even on the other side. Everybody, there was this cheer that came up there, and it was like, I can only imagine if that place was packed when that happened. And then Kyle Busch comes out with the pole winning car and everybody else slotting in behind. That was really cool. I mean, I haven't covered that many races in the media aspect of it, but I thought that was one of the coolest moments. That was almost magical right there. And I don't want to get too far, some good and the bad with this whole race weekend too. But that was really cool. They brought the cars out for the heat. They had that nice staging area in the infield. I like they didn't clutter it up with too many people and all that stuff too, so people could kind of get the cars in and out. I thought they did a decent job. The officials did to get them in and out of there and kind of figure out their protocol. It would have been interesting to see the drivers meeting to kind of actually understand how they were planning on organizing that and these different groups and who goes into which staging group. And, you know, especially when a lot of weird stuff happens, like Ty Dillon's issue. I guess he had some kind of issue with like a transmission linkage, I believe it was, that happened earlier, even before we get to the discussion of his two jumped restarts in the last chance qualifier there too. Yeah, I thought that was really cool. They brought the cars out, and when they brought the cars out, I think they brought more fans in there. But I mean, it was startling to see just the massive increase in how many people were in there between the conclusion of the second last chance qualifier and the start of the main event. That was the biggest jump by far, and that's certainly understandable. A couple changes they made along the way too. I heard that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was going to be the grand marshal for the race. He wasn't there, at least as far as I saw. I don't know if he just wasn't a part of the ceremonies, or if it was something else I missed when I was going to the garage or something, but I didn't see him there. I know Jeff Gordon took a big role in that. I don't know if he was just a last minute replacement for that, since he was already there with the team or something. But they had something with that. Certainly hope I hope it wasn't anything serious for Kareem, but I didn't hear anything new on my end there. But I loved that they had all the different athletes that were coming out there. Reggie Bush from USC. What was that? I think Matt Leinart was there. Danny Trejo, Lastbro saw him out there somewhere. Sheamus from wrestling was there. I mean, that was, I don't really follow wrestling, you can tell. But we had a great time. I actually did a meetup with a couple folks here. Confirmation 07. I don't know if you're in here in the chat tonight, but I know we met up, and a couple other people stopped by there too. We met up over right by the torch, and there was some plaques over there, and there was an opening that was basically the main entrance to get in. I didn't plan it well enough to know this because I was still getting my bearings too, but that turned out to be basically the spot where everybody was showing up. A lot of team members came in there to kind of get staged, all that, and that's where Jeff Gordon entered the track, and Sheamus, and what was it? The guy, which Taylor is it? Is it Jordan Taylor? That's the one that's dresses up in the Jeff Gordon gear, like he came in there, so that was pretty cool. I don't know how many people was everybody, but that was pretty cool. Oh, it said that was Kareem was ill. Okay, well, get well soon, Kareem, for sure. It's too bad we missed him there. Crossed for sure. So it was interesting. So that was there was that too. He was in a promo or commercial. I thought Yeah, I'm gonna talk to talk to my brother on that one. He said he saw him there, but I don't know if that was something else there. Um, yeah, but I mean, really, I mean, gosh, I mean, we're I don't even I don't even know which order to really put a lot of this in. Um, the last place competition. I think this was a interesting approach. The folks over at NASCAR, actually, I was talking with Mr. Humphrey there over at NASCAR when I was kind of trying to figure out the credentialing process on that, and he was actually asking me. I was like, "Yeah, how are you going to actually follow last place in this race?" And we had that discussion, that poll actually that came up afterwards there, where the discussion seemed to be whoever's last in the main event should be the official last place finisher, and I agree with that. That makes sense because you do have these other qualifiers, much like the Winston Open in the All Star race or things of that nature. I think that one's an interesting way to approach it. But I had a lot of fun writing that article. I hope it comes itself because what I was trying to do, certainly during the heat races and last chance qualifiers, is just kind of track who was running last in each of them, and if anybody was able to kind of bounce back from running in the back of the field in any of those heats, and kind of following up on that. This was more or less what my approach would have been if I had covered like Eldora, for example, in the truck series, because I thought about doing that in the or the actual website there if we actually covered that race there, because it's of course got the same heats and last chance qualifiers and so forth there. Kind of last place is a moving target and a way to kind of talk about a lot of these different teams. It was interesting to kind of see the difference in strategy too. I think there was some concerns going into this that maybe the drivers, because of supply chain issues or just getting ready for Daytona or even other races after that. I know Logano, that car very well that you saw do donuts on the LA Coliseum could very well be entered in the Fontana race here in just a few weeks. At least that was the original plan before he won the race. So we'll see what happens on that end. I don't think anybody was really kind of, being too awful delicate with the cars. I think the only moment that I sensed that there was some trepidation was the very first group of cars to come out for practice on Saturday. Harrison Burton, the first of those, kind of lead the cars out of the tunnel. You see the videos on my Twitter feed there. Had a group of about, I guess, what was it, 9 or 10 car groups through there. They were really tiptoeing out there. I mean, everybody was over 14 seconds, and things picked up pretty well from there. And I think they set up the different sessions pretty well to kind of embolden these drivers to be as aggressive as they could be. And certainly by the time you got to the main event, they were certainly comfortable enough to actually go out there and just throw it all out there. And the caliber of these drivers themselves, that they were able to kind of rise to that challenge. I know this got discussed a lot in 2020 when the pandemic stopped practice and qualifying for that time, and these guys had to just jump in these cars and race, even if they were tracks that require a lot of preparation, like a place like Darlington. I think we saw a lot of that situation there too, so that would be kind of a thing. But I enjoyed kind of writing that and describing who was battling for last place in each of the heats, how that resulted in where, and then who was ending up in the last chance qualifiers, and then who finished last in those events there. That certainly became significant with Ty Dillon's experience by the second last chance qualifier for sure. And then in between all of that, kind of set up a Plinko board, if you will, for Denny Hamlin in his path through those same sessions in practice and qualifying and the heat races and the last chance qualifiers and the main event. Of course, he actually had to win his last chance qualifier and getting into the main event that way, so that made that a bit easier. So that was kind of my approach with that. I didn't fully describe everyone that DNQ'd for it there. I felt like that would have been, that would have kind of been just redundant, but that was kind of my approach into that. So, you guys having buffering issues? Hopefully we're not having the same internet issues we had earlier here, so definitely mention if you guys have any other issues. We got I'm seeing a couple comments here that maybe we got the rate dropping down. I think it was an issue with something else on the internet here. I didn't actually have to disconnect the router, yeah, this is a different issue there. very occasionally, mostly just a slow frame rate. Okay. Yeah, if it gets too distracting, you could probably open up a different tab or something like that. But that would be something else to kind of talk about that there too. Let's see. But let's see. So, other storylines, individual drivers. Cody Ware, first and foremost. I hated to miss the Pitbull concert there. I really need to be in two places at once, but I'm glad Lastbro was able to kind of follow up on that for me there. I had to, after the last chance qualifiers were completed, I certainly followed the 51 car back over to the garage area and was very happy to talk with Cody. He was so excited after that run. I mean, it was bittersweet that he didn't get to transfer into the main event. He certainly did everything that he needed to do. He was still within sight of Allmendinger, but those colleague cars were both so strong all weekend, especially Haley. I thought Haley was going to be one that was going to try to win it all there, and unfortunately that incident with Larson ended that. But I thought Ware did a fantastic job. And again, this is something that I said to Rick when he came out of the hauler there and said, "Hey, you're gonna have to find somebody new to pick on." And I don't blame him, and I have no problem giving him that moment either, because I want these guys to be happy that they get their way to work their way up the rankings. We talk about this with teams. A lot of the teams that are top teams now were guys that struggled at one point, and probably would have been NASCAR contenders in their own era. Hendrick Motorsports even at a point was on the verge of shutting down famously. But Rick Ware's team and that partnership with Stewart-Haas Racing and Ford, again, and it's perhaps just, a little bit of sampling error, because it's just this bizarre event that's not even run for points. But, again, it's a race at the end of the day, and they distinguished themselves not just in that race, in last chance qualifier, just coming up that one spot short, but also in practice. The fact that Ware was briefly as high as 6th in the practice sheets, and that he was actually ahead of Ryan Preece in the final tally when the practice completed. I believe they were about 13th and 15th on the sheet there when that session completed. So that was very impressive to see on that end. I thought that was good. Good job by Ryan Preece as well. I kicked myself that I didn't follow up on the discussion. We had a very good discussion about this over the offseason about what it means for Preece to have this alternate driver or reserve driver contract and how he feels about that. I just missed that one on that one. Hopefully he'll be at Fontana again. I'd love to follow up with him on that because I think that's an interesting topic. There were discussions again, especially from folks at Stewart-Haas, about what is success for a driver that can't land a full-time contract in a particular series or another. Is it is a reserve driver thing kind of the path that people should have? So I thought Cody did a good job, and I thought Preece did a good job too. It seemed like he struggled a bit in the main event. There were reports that he had brake issues from the Ware team. The official results said oil pressure, but regardless of both of those, he was able to actually fire the car up after the race was over and did not need to get pushed back to the garage, as was the case with Reddick and Briscoe and Hamlin, the bottom three finishers at the end of that race too. Just slow video frame rate. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why they're a little laggy. That's bizarre. It shows up good on my screen, but there's something good with that. So hopefully it's not too distracting there. Again, if it's not too crazy there, hopefully it'll be something there in the meantime. So let's see. Well, Ty Dillon, I know it was a bit of a center of controversy in that. He ended up being a driver that, I'm sure you could tell from my tweets there that I ended up kind of focusing on more. One thing I thought was very strange going into the garage area on top of everything else that was already so strange with the cars and whatnot, is that the not having the open teams out there and having literally just the 36 cars out there. Even when you had 37 cars, when you had just at least one open guy out there, it still felt a little different in that respect. But just having literally just the 36 cars out there, sport's going to be like that at some point in the next few years, that you're just going to have the chartered guys out there, and they're just going to close that door completely for open guys to even attempt these races. They're already making it financially difficult, but the reality of them not even being there. And I'm sure, they could have been there. Of course, the initial press releases on this said that they had spots for 40 drivers, and indeed the format announcement indicated that they had 40 driver spots available. And, but realistically, a team like Carl Long's Motorsports Business Management, or these new organizations like the Money Team Racing, are they going to come out here west for this unpredictable race and then go into Daytona, or are they going to just focus that much more on getting their Daytona cars ready, especially when these are brand new cars that everybody's figuring out? Well, the decision seems obvious there. Hopefully, maybe in next season in the future, we'll see some open guys come out here. Maybe that it could be more workable for them, and we can get even more guys out there. But it was a bit sobering there. I was very curious, of course, with all these driver and team changes, who was going to be the lowest ranked of those 36 different teams, the top 36 teams in the chartered organization. And it was interesting to see what was going on with the Ty Dillon organization. The new, what was going to be the 94 car with the GMS team before, of course, the Petty merger, and the 42 car. Seemed like he was struggling all kinds of problems there with practice and qualifying during that, but really turned up the heat in the race. He was certainly crestfallen after his second jumped restart ultimately sent him out of the field after winning, or being flagged the winner of the second last chance qualifier, just walking down the stairs, exiting the stadium. Luckily, I had kept the official channel on my radio at the time, or on my scanner rather, and hearing that, the 42 was going to be given a tail end penalty at the end of the race, which essentially dropped him to last place. Certainly the 36 ranked drivers, but certainly out of the field there where he couldn't do that. It sucks to miss the show and have the car be just completely beat to heck as it was, with the right side torn all up on that in particular. Missing the show there, but really appreciated him talking to me and some other people there, and interviewing about what was happening. I was able to get some more context as to what happened with his car in practice, because it did seem like there was some kind of mechanical issue. It listed him out as an accident in his heat race, but it turns out, again, it was more of a mechanical problem on that sense. And that kind of goes back to that question we had, the parameters of the track that made it particularly difficult for these cars to kind of stay together, and having these mechanical issues. Maybe we're not going to have the same situation there. But I thought that was an interesting story to follow. Unfortunate it worked out that way. But that was kind of the part that I was, I'm glad that they had an opportunity that you could actually talk to these drivers that were eliminated from the race, the 13 guys that had fallen out, and that gave you kind of that opportunity there before the main event. And of course, that was when all the fans started showing up there. So that was kind of it. But yeah, I did sense that it was a little tricky to kind of figure out where you needed to be. When you're doing print media, you're kind of told to kind of just stand back and kind of wait your turn while the TV broadcast people do their thing. And of course, in the infield after the race, you had people kind of being, interviewed. I think they interviewed Larson and a couple other guys. But there was other, drivers that just weren't talked to. I saw Harrison Burton get out of his car and then get right back into it again because he had to drive it out of there with the rest of the group. So that was kind of interesting to find out about that too. So, really kind of interesting from that standpoint. Let's see. Again, I saw, Denny was still in his car when he was getting pushed back to the garage area. Again, bizarre mechanical issues. I do think, this was asked earlier, I saw a couple comments here about the way these cars actually respond to actual impact. We saw this with Eric Almirola's car, which had the tangle with Todd Gilliland during, I believe it was the first last chance qualifier, or maybe one of the heat races there. Bounced him into the outside wall there. I was very surprised when the car was being towed out, and I was in turn 4 at the time, right by the tunnel exit, that when he was getting towed back. It seemed like the winch was like clamped onto the hub of the, was like out of the fender completely. I thought that was kind of strange. I don't know if that was intended, or if it just breaks away, or if there wasn't anything attached to it. The entire hub assembly was actually removed from the right front to just kind of get it to roll onto the hauler there after the fact. But I thought that was kind of unusual, because at some points, some hits didn't seem to matter as much. Austin Cindric nosed into the inside wall there in his heat race and actually moved the barrier, but it was able to just kind of light it up and get rolling again there. And I thought that was really, really impressive. I thought he was going to be, down for the count, but he kept going. Meanwhile, Kurt Busch or Justin Haley get some contact out there, and they're just done. And they think you can't keep going. Chase Elliott, same deal. He spins by himself in the main event, hits with the driver's side of it just looked like there was just no damage to the car at all. I'll be curious. I mean, again, I think that Lastbro raised this, and maybe this was an intent behind doing this venue too. Maybe this was meant to be kind of an unofficial crash test for these cars under low speed impacts in competition to make sure the car is responsive as well, or how the car does respond to it. As to what information we're going to find out from that NASCAR can look at in these couple of weeks. Now we got the Super Bowl break before the Daytona 500. That'll be interesting, but I think it's going to be hard to tell how these cars really respond to, the big one, for example, at a super speedway, or, an accident on a faster track. I think that still remains to be seen. But hopefully they learn something from these low speed impacts, because I'm a little concerned to see an impact where, a car, hits one of these barriers and there's no dissipation of energy. The energy, moves a concrete jersey barrier, and actually in Cindric's case, actually knocked chunks off that barrier that was actually still there after the race. But either the car keeps going. It's just too hard headed to keep going. I know Ryan Newman raised issues about this car and his concerns before the concluding race at Phoenix last year. Maybe that was the issue. I'm no engineer or anything, but I mean, that was surprising. Surprising. I think in any other race, I think with if you set the Gen 6 cars out there, Cindric probably would have burst the radiator on his car. Chase Elliott's car probably would have had too much of a fender rub to keep going with the tools that were available in the infield. So hard to say, but again, I think that's going to be interesting to find out. So yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be interesting, but I think it'll be kind of interesting on that one. Seeing questions about the Almirola and Gilliland incident. Yeah, I mean, I don't know who to blame on that one. I think it was just hard racing. I think the Larson and Haley one was a little bit more flagrant. At that point, that wreck looked like it was coming right at me when I was sitting there. I was sitting pretty close to where the security folks were down at the bottom of that stairwell, and 13 got turned. I thought it was going to collect the entire field. So I was pretty amazed that it was just a single car incident. Ryan Blaney's incident, I know, got mentioned there as well. I did see Blaney at that point. I was again over in between turns 1 and 2 at kind of at eye level with the conk out there, kind of slow down and then pull into the infield. It didn't seem like he had any damage. And then he came back out there and ran some more laps. I didn't know anything about this Hans thing where I guess he threw it onto the track. I didn't get any footage of that. I got some pictures of his car pulling into the infield, but that was about it. Couldn't really tell anything from my view, so I'm afraid I don't really have any other information on that one. But if there's any penalties, I guess we'll certainly find out here in the next little bit. Like other drivers to be kind of impressed with, Eric Jones, I thought did a fantastic job in this one. I think that was a great deal for them. I think the Petty team, his last chance qualifier, like mentioned here. But still, I think if both teams showed some speed and perhaps just a little bit too much speed, maybe that's something that's a little bit easier to fix than trying to get the cars to go faster. So we'll see what that happens in Daytona and everything else going forward. I personally thought that Eric Jones going to the 43 was going to be a great opportunity to be in a lower, tension, ride, and especially a car that Wallace had done so well on the super speedways, and Eric Jones having won super speedways himself. We'll see if things kind of shake out with that. No, RD Fox 76. Thank you for clearing that up. No, I'm not saying that Haley's car looked like it was undamaged. Quite the opposite. That one was tore up. Absolutely. Very much like Almirola's, with the whole left front torn off on the Haley car. Because, he moved that barrier. What I was surprised with was that Cindric didn't have a similar issue. I guess it was just because the right front didn't hit, or the left front didn't hit the wall the same way that Haley's did. But Cindric and Elliott, I was surprised their cars didn't have very much damage and were able to keep going. I thought that was kind of unusual in that sense. But and then probably in the middle, one I was probably most surprised with was that Kurt Busch was knocked out. I didn't really get a good view of how much damage he did have, but it didn't seem like it was that bad. I guess the car was leaned over a little bit on the right side, so probably just didn't get a good view of what you saw there. Yeah, hard to say. But yeah, no, Haley's car, yeah, definitely showed damage. It was completely annihilated on that corner, and there was obviously no chance they were going to keep that car going. But I would have fully expected with a Gen 6 car that Cindric and Chase Elliott would have been out of the race as well. And was kind of amazed that they weren't. So, we'll see. I mean, I'm glad there is some responsiveness in the damage there. It's possible that NASCAR even designed this next-gen car with the crash clock in mind, knowing that in most cases nowadays you have a car that gets in an accident and it just can't keep going. But we saw plenty of these cars just take a licking and keep on ticking. Cole Custer bounced off the wall a couple times, still got a top 5 out of this one, if memory serves. So that was kind of interesting to see there too. But yeah, thank you for clearing that up, RD Fox. Certainly don't want to misspeak on that. Ryan, let's see, Ryanidus there. I see your comment there on BJ McLeod. I would have liked to. I was looking to get an interview with him about what was going on with the 78 there. I don't know if they just had a mechanical issue. It wouldn't have been the only one because I think a lot of teams. But yeah, he did seem to be kind of trying to stay out of people's way. It's hard to. Excuse me. It's hard to really distinguish, like, watching the cars going around there because the margin for error was so narrow. Certainly in some of the opening laps, it seemed like Harrison Burton was kind of just getting knocked around and staying out of the way. And then, heck, in some of these other races, he was actually kind of going for the lead. It was kind of a different deal there. But, as to what these teams are going to be able to do, in the infield, and especially when we get to these actual points races where you can go back to the hauler, you can get a different assembly and get something out there, especially if you clear the clock out there and they can get back in there. What can you fix? These are going to be interesting NASCAR battles this year, I would say, from that aspect. Is it just going to be a thing where you bounce the thing off the wall and you can't even limp it around, you can't even fix it? Are you just literally done for the day with the slightest bit of impact? Or is there much more? Is it more than you can do? I have no idea, and I think it's still up in the air from this one. And again, I think that question hasn't really been resolved, quite honestly. Clearly, if you have an impact that's disproportionately to one corner, as in the case of Justin Haley or Eric Almirola, you're done for the day. You tear up that right front, and again, it almost seems like it just completely disengages from the car. You're just toast. It looks like wrecking an actual sports car, which these cars seem more akin to than the previous generations. Excuse me. But that was kind of a different situation with that. But I guess, yeah, if you hit a wall flush at a lower speed, or if you hit a wall flush with the side of the car at a lower speed, that's not something that's necessarily going to just completely knock you out of it. So, when we get to a place like Martinsville, I guess that'll be another eye-opener too. How much, if anything, you can learn from this to apply to that. So that'll be, kind of a different one too. Kind of want to get the race results here and look at that too. But, my goodness. I mean, it was, just a massive undertaking. I think NASCAR does need to be congratulated on, what was done here. And I know there was a lot of mixed feelings coming into this, especially when it was announced, and there was mixed feelings through the entire weekend, whether it was about attendance, whether it was about the performances, whether it was about anything else. I think it was, I think it was incredible. I mean, I'm having, it was so strange. I mean, to literally take an entire race weekend and just pick it up somewhere and drop it somewhere else. It used to be, you have to just find a track for it. And now basically, as Harvick said, this kind of blows things open. Now you could just build a track somewhere and host the elite form of NASCAR. They're the top division. You can just throw them out there. And if it's, even if it's down to just a quarter mile in length, it's big enough to send these guys out there, at least 23 of them at a time. I think that's impressive. Now, I mean, does it mean that every stadium out there is going to be, a stadium track? No, it doesn't. And I think there's been some good discussion already about how the parameters of some stadiums are just not big enough compared to the LA Coliseum. But it could be a possibility, and maybe something else crazy will happen. And, as Joey Logano said, he seems to have a preference for these unusual races, having now won the first Bristol Dirt race and now won this event. Yeah. So it's hard to really say. But yeah, taking a race weekend and then dropping it in the middle of downtown LA, in the middle of this college campus, again, where you got people, playing beach volleyball just, a block away, or you have like these museums where people are lining up to see these exhibits and stuff, literally within earshot of the cars. And then you go into, and you go into this. It's the weirdest thing. It's the kind of thing you always kind of imagine, going to a different campus somewhere else. And it's like, wow, this would be a great spot for a racetrack. Just kind of imagine something out there. But I think it was a huge accomplishment. I think I think it's a little bit strange, much like the Bristol Dirt Race, that we're doing something where we're creating a temporary track and then tearing it up and then building it again and then tearing it up and then building it again. I think that's a little, I don't know how sustainable it is. And again, I'm not going to do the angle that I know a lot of people have had where it's like, oh, it costs so much money. Why does it cost, I get it. Yeah. It's not my money. It's not my deal. And I they can blow their money on whatever. I am a little concerned if that's sustainable though. I guess other sports have made it work. You have, you have monster truck rallies where they bring dirt into stadiums. You have motocross rallies where they do the same thing. Maybe this is just the latest step in that, and maybe we're going to see more of it. But if they're going to do that, I think they should do what the Bristol Dirt Race did and bring more support series out and get the absolute most out of this. There's a lot of limitations to that with this, of course, because now you have, of course, you're still going to have USC football. You're still going to have, heck, they're turning it up right now as we speak because they're going to have a rugby game there just next week. That's what I was hearing. So they're getting on. They already had like half the jersey barriers moved out of there before I even left the media center. So that was kind of the situation with all of that. Yeah. I think that was kind of interesting. But let's see. Let's take a look at the results here again on this. Joey Logano over Kyle Busch, Austin Dillon, Eric Jones, Kyle Larson, the 5th spot. We touched on his incident there with Justin Haley there a little bit. Kind of a little, a little bit of a controversial incident there that sent him into the wall. William Byron in 6th, Cole Custer in 7th. Mentioned he was, thought he was in the top 5 earlier, but no, in the 7th spot. Christopher Bell, quite good, given his Chili Bowl status. Kind of underestimated him going into this here, but certainly like Larson, used to driving in very tight confines out there and having a good showing there in 8th. AJ Allmendinger still able to get a good run for Colleague there in 9th. Would have easily been up there with his teammate had the Larson incident not happened. And Kevin Harvick rounding out the top 10. Harvick was my fantasy pick, so I was kind of watching him through the week there. I was expecting almost a 2004 Dale Jarrett situation where Harvick has like a really rough season last year and then comes out and wins the first possible exhibition this year. May not have completely set the world on fire there in the Busch car there with the title sponsors race. But I thought he did a decent job, and I thought, he looked good out there. I think that perhaps, the Rick Ware partnership maybe helps the other direction. Who knows? But good looking paint job too. And actually, I guess that leads us to the next point of discussion to talk about. I've only kind of really talked a little bit about the cars themselves and, of course, number placements and all the little changes there. I will concede to an extent that the number movement isn't as big of a deal knowing that every car in the field has done it. I think if you had a mishmash of some cars that didn't have it and some that did, I think it would be much less visually pleasing. I think it would look terrible. There are still cars that where it looks so much better on it than I think Austin Dillon's car looked terrible. I think the 3 doesn't lend itself to that. I think any number that was a wide font, a font where it filled most of the door, it really doesn't work with this format because they have to shrink it down so much. They got to just get that Photoshop element and just shrink that thing down too much. The Spire Motorsports ones were particularly subject to this, especially the 77 that Landon Castle had. It was as cool as it was to see Landon Castle back out there in a Cup Series ride. Yeah, that 77 was massive on the side of that car. And they really have to change their font or figure something else out because that really, it was so small, it was barely visible on that car. And on Corey LaJoie's number 7 car, the number kind of blended into the overall design of the paint scheme to the point where, actually I was talking to Last Bro about this. It looked like it didn't even have a number at all. So there's still some efforts that could be done to kind of make that look better. It was good to see Cindric bring back the Cascadia paint scheme there on the Freightliner car, the one that Keselowski nearly won New Hampshire with last year. It was awesome seeing that in person. That's a gorgeous looking car with its number movement. I thought that did okay. I thought, there were the ones that looked okay with the number movement. The 43 I thought looked good. I thought that one looked all right. I think both the Trackhouse cars looked okay. Still wasn't entirely crazy about Chastain's where the logo was entirely on the door. That was kind of good to see. So I think we have, kind of a situation where, that looked better. I think I was a little more comfortable with it, having seen that everybody was doing it. If everybody has to do it and everybody's just kind of stuck with it, I think that's okay. I'm trying really hard to work with it. I mean, I'm not exactly all, ginned up about the way diecast is going to look, and Throwback Weekend I think is going to be a little off. I think it's going to be it's a departure that's just a bridge too far, I still think. But it didn't look as appalling with everybody there. It was okay. I was really, really trying to work with it. And I think that was pretty good. So there was that. As to the overall look of the cars, I think, not to sound like a scene on a Titanic, but I mean, seeing rims that had never been used before, just absolutely immaculate rims that they're going to put on these cars that, either they only been used in testing or were just brand new sets that they just haven't even got around to, putting those on the cars themselves. Looking absolutely immaculate. We're not talking about chassis that you've had since 2006 or something, like some teams have done in the past, which is a sad thing to lose. Much like a NASCAR man's series there on Beneath the Sheet Metal, having these cars with extensive histories, being able to be kind of repurposed. I guess inevitably that was never going to last forever. But yeah, having just brand new cars out there, older haulers and all that, but strange. Still getting used to it. It still feels like NASCAR. I mean, you have the cars coming in there and they still have, the rear spoilers. I thought the engine note was really nice there. I thought that it sounded like a monster truck rally, quite honestly. I don't know how much of that was the stadium atmosphere and the acoustics, especially from the tunnel. But it could be the rapid accelerations and decelerations of having to go down very, very short straightaways, even like monster truck rallies, or at least back when I used to go to them, where, that they had those runs where you had to kind of have the cars turn around really tight, or the trucks turn around really tight and mash the gas that quickly. Kind of reminded me of that. And I was starting to doubt even towards the end of it that they're going to get 23 cars out there. But yeah, I was pretty pleased with the engine note. I was just kind of taking it in by the end. And just watching them go by for the last 40 laps or so. They sound pretty good. They sound pretty mean. I know that they don't have quite as much horsepower. I do think the Xfinity package, with the amount of horsepower that they have, maybe is the ticket to work with. But yeah, I think it's, they sound good, and I maybe somewhere down the line I'll get used to the number thing. Maybe I won't even mind the ones where it doesn't look very good on it, but I'm not sold on it on the ones for the Spire cars. And I probably even extend it to both the Childress cars. I think Reddick's even didn't. Reddick's worked a little better because the number was a lot bigger, I think, than it was on the 3. The 3 scheme was just awful. I was not won over by that. But Who knows? Who knows? But I think we got something pretty good there. But yeah, they sound pretty good. They sound pretty mean. I think they don't sound anemic at all. I think it's gonna be very interesting to see what happens when these cars come out at Fontana here in a couple weeks. Of course, Daytona, well before that, but going out there at Fontana and hearing them again, that's going to be really interesting. So, fingers crossed on that one. Yeah. I almost tweeted a couple times. It says like, yeah, look at this crowd here. It's like, this is the same region that let Ontario Motor Speedway and Riverside go away. There's actually somebody who did mention Riverside actually during one of the in race segments when they were kind of interviewing people from the crowd. But that was kind of interesting there too. But yeah. But I think I got departed from talking about the situation with the 78 team with BJ McLeod. I didn't interview him, but I would have loved to wonder, what was going on there. If they were just, I don't think a driver would ever tell you if they were taking it easy or trying to make sure they didn't tear up a car in time for Daytona. If there was a car that seemed like it was trying to kind of actively stay out of anybody's way, I would probably say it would be his. He was the only one to really lose laps in any of the heat races. And then last chance qualifier, he kind of, I didn't even see him pull out of the track there, or pull out of competition when, the Almirola wreck happened. And I think that was last chance qualifier now that I think about it. So I didn't even see him, pull off at that point there too. That was the other thing. Even though the track's that small, it's still very easy to miss stuff there. I mean, of course, look at the back end of the field. I'm used to missing stuff that's happening up front. But seeing the leader actually catch up and try to reel him in, you can see that pretty well, and it happens still pretty quickly. Usually, still in that 14 lap gap that we see it. But the best view that a camera can do is just do an overall view of that and actually kind of have a shot of the entire track and just see where everybody is. I think that would have been more than possible at this track. I think the broadcast should have really kind of thought outside the box with that. If and again, condition, I haven't really seen the full broadcast. I've seen highlights. But if they didn't really use that camera angle that much, I think that was a missed opportunity. I think tighter shots would have made it much harder to figure out what the heck was going on because the track is just so small and you're turning almost constantly there. So, yeah. But, again, I think there's a lot that everybody was figuring out. I think there were fans there that were figuring out the logistics of actually going to a race. I think there were people at the Coliseum that were figuring out, where they need to turn people to get to the garage area and back or different parts of the facility. And I think maybe even the surrounding community was still getting used to the concept of having NASCAR fans out there. Because again, I think as much as I thought it was great that they had Ice Cube there and great that they had Pitbull out there, but they really should have had something for people to do. It just went dark and quiet like immediately. And also, if you were parked in the actual park area, you only were given about 90 minutes after the checkered flag to get your car out of there. So that was a really tight one. And that did not include the parking structure that we were parked in because we were actually there until about like 7 or 8 o'clock. By that point, I think there were only about 4 or 5 people in the media center at that time. So that was interesting. But yeah, I don't know if he. Yeah, I don't know if there was anything else that was going on with the BJ McLeod thing. I didn't get a chance to speak with him there on that, but it would have been interesting to find out if something else was going on there, or if they were just kind of, again, that's the problem. We saw this a little bit in the All-Star race. Anybody that's a chartered team, they have to be there. They have to be They have to be part of it. That's part of their contract with having these charters. Is they got to run both exhibition races. They got to run, the Clash, and they got to run the other one. And even if they're a team like Live Fast Motorsports there in the 78. Can they be faulted if perhaps they're trying to save a car that they don't have to build back up for Fontana or something? No, you can't. You can hardly blame them, especially you've got Daytona coming up with its the big one, a distinct possibility at any moment. That's gonna be one to look at. So yeah, it's interesting, but yeah. And I've seen this comment there, Ryanidis there you have there also about the car-on-car contact. Yeah, I mean, it did seem like the cars really put up with that pretty well. There were a lot of times, especially in the corners, you had people skating in there. flat spot in their tires, but some of those were the fastest in qualifying. You had also situations where cars were bouncing off each other and then both of them kept going. And you didn't see a fender rub or a big trail of smoke out of anything. Any big trails of smoke you saw for most of this race was anybody just locking up their tires. It wasn't any, it was rubbing in there. And oh my gosh, you got to worry about a tire going down. I don't know if they were, I mean, it was hard. It did seem to have some contact in turn 4 in one of the earlier heats, but I didn't see too much action on that side of it there. I have to say again, I the thought of having a track that's so small that you can see everything that's happening in the infield and there's no buildings or anything in the way, I mean, that appeals to me. But again, I thought it was just so strange that they just kind of let these drivers or at least their teams were just kind of stranded in the middle of the track and couldn't get back out. Creating a tunnel for the specific purpose is way too much, obviously, but I thought the whole purpose of the music break was to be kind of clean stuff up and, let those guys get out of there, maybe kind of fix their cars and get back, but maybe they hadn't really worked that out. But that's another thing I think that could be interesting to find out further down the line there too. Let's see. Yeah, seeing comments on Tony Stewart in the booth. Yeah, I'm going to be kind of interested to see what happened there. Yeah, I don't know if there was, I mean, I didn't see, when I was in the infield, like, I know that, of course, we were anticipating that maybe, there's going to be a fight or people are going to be, yelling at somebody or something like that. I was in the infield pretty close to the, right after the race there, and everybody seemed just kind of be standing by the cars just waiting to go. I didn't see anybody that particularly seemed all that upset with somebody else or confronting somebody else. And they kind of crammed them all in there pretty quick after that. And the crew members too, I don't think they seemed particularly, interested either. Fox was kind of working their way, kind of picking and choosing, who to talk to and doing a couple features there. There was even another feature with Kyle Larson that was done in the garage area after the race was over. And they had a lot of media out there for that. I don't know what that was for exactly. But yeah, I don't know, but, yeah, just wild though. If there was anything I probably would have done differently, I probably would have taken in more of the spectacle of it, a lot more, but, I really enjoyed kind of talking with folks there, that were attending the race and understanding that this was, especially people that had never been to one before or in Confirmation 07. Again, if you're watching this later, I understood this was the second race you ever been to. I mean, what a tremendous, going to Sears Point, last year and then go into this one. I thought that was, again, a tremendous one to put on the list there, seeing the inaugural, event there too. But, yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting, what happens, coming up here too. I know it's getting late here and I know it's a weekday night here. It's, just past 8:00 here at NASCAR headquarters and past 11:00. I appreciate you guys tuning in here. We'll probably wrap up here pretty soon for those of you guys tuning in. I know we had a bit of a delay there with some internet issues earlier, but if you guys have any other questions about the race or anything that I haven't talked about or anything I said that did not make sense, definitely ask me here. I'm still kind of letting the dust settle here from all the wildness from here too. But in the meantime, we'll probably do a couple trivia questions here and then wrap it up for this evening. Tune this weekend. And thank you again for everybody that followed along here with the Twitter feed during the weekend. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I was glad that the reception was really good. I also give props to the Coliseum for that. Their Wi-Fi was excellent. It only slowed a little bit at the start of the main event, which is certainly to be expected given how many people were there. I had made preparations with bringing a Wi-Fi hotspot with me to kind of ease that a little bit. It ultimately didn't get used that much, but I'm glad the tweets were able to go out and everything because that was a big concern I had going into this one. I didn't want to be. I knew that and the seat that I had didn't really have in the media center didn't really have a good view of outside the track there, so that's why I had to kind of wander around outside the range there. But I'm glad that worked out because I didn't want to miss any of the stuff that was happening, certainly the battle for last place for you guys and doing that. And thank you also to the guys. I think we had 3 new people join the last year on this weekend. So you had some more names added onto the magnet. We'll do the magnet drawing. I'll probably do that tomorrow. So I know it's kind of late on this end here. But I'll get that set up there and we'll, give that one away there, for you guys and begin to prepare for, well, this off weekend with the Super Bowl, and then the 500, and then our next coverage trackside for Fontana. Yeah, but at any rate, let's do a couple trivia questions here. For those of you, I didn't want to promise that, then not do that, so we'll do a couple here if you guys are interested. While you're picking which category you like, I'll see if I can field some other questions you may have from this weekend. The categories again are driver, let's see, NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Again, those categories are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. And we'll do that for a couple questions here. I brought my program back here from the race, so I picked that up. I thought it was interesting. They used basically the render from the TV ad there for their illustration and showing it as a night race, even though it was during the day. But you had that whole deal there. Other interesting thing with the actual entry list sheet that on the back here is basically the same kind of printout you can get from the NASCAR media site. It actually just says the top 4 finishers in Sunday's heat races will determine the starting lineup for the 16-car 150-lap feature event. It doesn't have the update for the full 23 cars that ended up being, of course, the final number there for that. Of course, this is a list of probable entries too, so it's still got some kind of guesses. Although I think it pretty much has the entry list pretty accurate, even Landon Castle in the 77. So I think other than that, they did a pretty good job with that. But yeah, so that was kind of the situation on that end. I see your post there, RD Fox. Yeah, vote Brock's choice for the topic. Yeah, I can do that. I just realized I have the top chat thing selected instead of the live chat. So let me get that switched over. So yeah, okay, we don't do pits that much. Yeah, I'm with you there, Charles. Let's go ahead and do a couple from there, and we'll wrap up the show for this evening. So thank you again, guys, for tuning in as we begin another season of Last Place Action and go on from there. So we'll do a couple pits questions here to wrap up this evening. Alrighty. Doot. Let's get the easy ones. I'm trying to get a good one here. All right, here we go. First question. What make of car won 3 of the first 5 NASCAR Winston Cup championships? What make of car won 3 of the first 5 NASCAR Winston Cup championships? Interesting wording on that one. So, yeah, let's go with that'll be our first question for tonight. I miss contingency sponsors too, RD Fox, certainly. That would be the case there too. I'll kind of browse through the chat here as well and see what we got. Start building airport tracks again, 611 Hornet. I'm with you there. That would be pretty hip. Car tomorrow, favorite to win the 500. I picked Ryan Blaney last year. It seems like it's only a matter of time until he breaks through. He's been so close most of his career, except, of course, the year I picked him when he gets in the big one. But I think he'd be pretty good. Again, will be interesting to see if Eric Jones can keep the momentum going from this race. Maybe the GMS partnership could be enough to get over it. But maybe Blaney again. It's not. I'm not sure if that's going to be my fantasy pick. Excuse me. Get a little more beverage here. But it could be something that happens there. Let's see. Jordan Taylor, there you go. Screen keeps freezing. Hopefully this is an issue for Daytona. I think we just had like a bad moon or something like that today. That was, oh gosh, that was the other thing too. When we got there on Friday, we actually went out to the movie theater. We saw Moonfall, and it's like, oh my gosh, that movie's terrible. It was pretty bad. I mean, Last Bro was a little more forgiving, but I thought it was unfortunate. I like disaster films, and I grade them on a curve because of that. But this one was just a cluster. It just wasn't very. It was a mess. It wasn't really. I don't think it was very good. It was kind of like 2012, where Roland Emmerich's End of the World movie, where he tried to make it funny for no reason. This movie was kind of a lot like that. and it just did it a lot worse. And it was just, it just, I don't know. It's. I guess it was a paycheck, so I guess it's it works out. But I don't know. I'm not sure I'd recommend it though. What make of car won 3 of the first 5 NASCAR Winston Cup championships? The answer is Hudson. RD Fox 76, you got it. Hudson. Oh, so did Charles and James. You got it too. Absolutely. It was a little bit of a trick question when it said 3 of the first 5 Winston Cup championships. Is like, is it talking when Winston became the presenting sponsor in the modern era? Or is it just talking 3 of the first 5 ever? Clearly from this answer, we're going with 3 of the first 5 ever. So there you go. Alrighty. Doot, doot. What make of car did David Pearson drive to his 1968 NASCAR Winston Cup title? Twister is the best disaster film, Charles. You're right. Amazing soundtrack, amazing editing. Godspeed Bill Paxton. I can't believe he's not with us anymore. I thought he was fantastic in that. That's really good, and that has serious rewatch value. It's very good. I know. Well, I mean, unless you've experienced something like that firsthand, I mean, I imagine it's not very popular in regions there. It's very. I don't know how realistic of a depiction it is to the real thing, but yeah. But I think it's a positive story. I think it's showing people trying to understand tornadoes and learn from them, and but it's a fun movie. It's I think that was really well done. It's certainly to be expected for the people that did Speed, so that's for sure. What make of car did David Pearson drive to his 1968 NASCAR Winston Cup title? Is the question. Hopefully it hasn't dropped off there. Okay, good. I'm glad it's still going. I feel like I'm missing something big from the race weekend here that I'm not talking about. I talked to Harrison Burton. That was cool. He seemed to have he was threatening to do something there in a couple of those races there. So that was interesting to see. Yeah, I mean, just kind of taking it in, just kind of amazing. I loved the cars being staged under the shade trees on that street. The weird tunnel, I had to ask around where the entrance to the tunnel was, because you could walk right past it and not even see it. So I did the little short film there just showing that. Yeah, just fascinating. And and certainly didn't expect Denny Hamlin to be the first guy I'd write about finishing last in the next gen car, at least in an exhibition race. We'll see what it looks like for Daytona. But yeah, now all 4 of Joe Gibbs Racing's teams have finished last in the Clash in 4 consecutive years at 3 different venues, basically, or 3 different tracks, between the Daytona road course and, of course, L.A. here. What make of car did David Pearson drive to his 68 Winston Cup title? The answer is Ford. Ford is the correct answer. Bobby Blair, looks like you were the first one to that over Charles Peterson and Car of Tomorrow. Ford. Alrighty. So we'll just do one more question here tonight. I know it's a late one here on the West Coast here, but again, I appreciate you guys tuning in. We're going to do our next show, for those of you just tuning in here, we're going to do after the Daytona 500. That one I'll be watching from home here, so we'll be doing the show as soon as possible after the conclusion of that. And for most of the shows this year, that will be the case. We'll be going back to doing the shows with the more immediate race reactions there and capturing that, and we'll keep that going with this, hopefully with this format. Hopefully we don't have the same issues with the internet connection here. I do apologize for that, but we'll make the best with that one way or the other here. So here's the last question here for the evening. What's the unofficial record for changing an engine during a race? Now, I guess we're going with time here. I'm going with the answer. Oh, yes, time is what we're going for. So I'll sneak a peek at the answer here, so I'll step out of that. What's the unofficial record for changing an engine during a race? Now, this is a late 90s thing for those of you new to the show here. I know a lot of you are returning viewers here, so familiar with that. But what is the unofficial record for changing an engine during a race? Which, of course, you can't do now, but we're talking a different time. Excuse me. Really got to stay hydrated here. I hope you guys like the. I decided to change up the look a little bit here in terms of my race attire. I brought out the blazer because I thought that would be kind of fun for the old the setup there for kind of the collegiate deal there. Wearing I was thinking kind of a Pat Summerall kind of Wide World of Sports kind of look there. I was going through my closet there, so kind of had fun with that. It was actually really comfortable to wear that on Saturday because it was actually there was a bit of wind that day. But it was way too hot on Sunday, so I just kind of left that on my work chair in there. So that was kind of the other part. But that was fun. But yeah, the plaid shirts, those have pretty much been retired from my race day attire. I found that I got stopped by security too much wearing that, people thinking I'm a fan or something instead. And it seems like most people in the media usually wear black polo shirts or polo shirts of some kind there. So I decided to change that up. And it worked. I didn't have a single issue with that the entire weekend. So I was very happy with that, and that made it much easier for me to do my job, especially when I had to go back there to the garage area. So that was cool. So that was fun, and that was that definitely helped. So yeah, that'll kind of be the plan from here on forward with Fontana and so forth. So I had to replace my recorder over the off season, changing the wardrobe a little bit. I don't think the blazer is not going to be a thing for every race. I don't think it's not. I think it's a little much, but yeah, we'll do some more with that in the future. Oh gosh, you had the ice storm there, James. Wow. So we get some hail here in California, but I mean like not a full on ice storm. Yeah, goodness. Tornadoes in New York, yeah. Wow. Interesting. Let's see. So we got guesses for the answer here again. The those just tuning in here. I'm afraid this is just wrapping up the show here for tonight. But what is the unofficial record? Unofficial for changing an engine during a race minutes. We got 12 minutes, 45 minutes, 20 minutes. The answer. Last question for tonight is 11 minutes. 11 minutes. RD Fox 76. You were the first one on that, and you got that one right off the bat. So good on you there. So that'll do it for the show here for tonight. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in here and for your patience there with a little bit of the issues there earlier. I hope you really enjoyed the coverage this weekend. I absolutely was thrilled to provide it this weekend. And big thanks to those of you in the last Trion as well. Hope you enjoyed being along for the ride on the door magnet there. Next trackside coverage is going to be at Fontana. So going back south again at the end of this month. But our next show is going to be in less than 2 weeks now after the running of the Daytona 500. We'll talk about the action throughout Speed Weeks there, the NASCAR portion of it, the dual races, Xfinity, Trucks, Cup. Maybe tap into some ARCA there at the same time. Yeah, we'll get into all of that. There is going to be a starting grid video for the Daytona 500. I've decided on just kind of keeping that as basically unofficial tradition here to keep that going. I'm still kind of figuring out what format that's going to be. That's probably going to be my next project to kind of work on there. We're also very close in the last Trion to reaching the goal to do another starting grid later this year. So we'll have some more information on that as that becomes available. Yeah, very well could have 2 starting grids in the first part of this season. So we'll certainly find out at the same time here. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Yeah, I think the Clash was fascinating. I think it was entertaining. I think there's a lot that won, and I very much enjoyed checking it out. And I hope more people get the opportunity to certainly do so because it was very interesting. And we're going to have a very interesting season coming up here. So we're going to queue up the video here, and we will wrap up for the evening. So again, have a good evening, everyone, and we'll see you before too much longer.